and welcome to today's episode of Sippin On Country. Our guest today is Tiffany Woys.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You are welcome. So, I feel like you have done a ton of stuff. So, I guess just give us a little overview of you and, you know, kind of what you do in the industry.
So I have been singing since I was, 4 or 5 years old. And at that point, I was listening to like Celine Dion and like Michael Bolton, Michael Jackson. And that was like what my mom listened to. And so I fell in love with that. I knew from then on I wanted to do music. At what capacity at 4 years old, I wasn't quite sure. I just knew I wanted to stand on a stage with a microphone.
Right.
And my parents were terrified. But it wasn't until kind of about to go off to college where I was like, I don't really want to do anything else but music. This is really what I want to do. I'm from Sacramento, California. There's not a lot of music opportunity there. My parents were like, hey, listen, we will support this dream if you support ours, and that's going off to school. So I went off to school. Then eventually, after 4 years, I came home and I said, I'm not giving this up. This is what I want to do. And so from then, I put a band together. I toured the whole West Coast for about 5 years.
Okay.
Back and forth to Nashville, because from then, I think I decided country music was for me when I heard LeAnn Rimes for the first time. And that
would do it.
Really, I fell in love with vocalists. It was like Faith Hill, Martina McBride, LeAnn Rimes, Trisha Yearwood. Those are the ones where I was like, whatever they're doing. And I liked that they were storytellers.
Right.
So that's how I started distinguishing the difference between, say, pop music and country music.
Yeah.
Was definitely in the songwriting and in songs. So I moved to Nashville in 2017.
Okay.
And after I'd already been working here back and forth for about 5 years, and we realized you can't really get a lot done from California.
Yeah.
So luckily, I have very supportive parents, and they're like, all right, let's go. So I packed my bag, had a moving truck, moved here, one-way ticket, never looked back. And it's been the best, like almost 7 years, like 6-7 years of my life. And since I've been here, I've released so much music now that I'm so proud of. And my first single that I released when I was here got debuted on Radio Disney Country.
Amazing.
And if anyone knows me, I'm like a Disney fanatic. So that was just like a really big moment for me to be recognized by a company that I've been raised going to the parks. And my mom worked at Disneyland growing up, so that was something that was really big. And that opened up so many doors for me. And so from then on, with music after music and being like charted on the Billboard Country Indicator chart with a few singles and going on radio tour, I've been able to establish a lot of great connections in the country music community. And now I'm starting to write my own music, which is really cool because I wasn't doing that from the get-go. And that's actually been really rewarding for me because I've now starting to share my stories versus somebody else's.
Right.
And I loved being a vehicle for other people's songs because I think that's what Nashville is. It's a songwriting community.
100%.
And without the song, you have nothing. So I was really proud to be pitched songs and record other songs because those people know what they're doing. And I didn't quite know what I was doing yet, and I still am learning. But now that I'm writing my own music, there is something very rewarding about that, being able to tell my own story.
Yeah. Actually, I like that you touched on the songs and being able to write that, you know, when you first kind of started off, that wasn't your forte.
Nope.
And I know that a lot of people you'll speak to and it's like, oh, well, like I have to write all my own stuff. But ultimately, if there is another song out there that is better.
Yes.
Then,
best song wins.
Right. You know, you have to find that balance
You
on
do.
your ego of just going, actually, like, it's okay. I mean, you have artists like Reba who have, I don't think she's ever written a song.
Yeah, and I even think Jason Aldean is someone as well who doesn't. There's a ton of artists where I almost feel like, though, the stigma's changed over the course of the years. So I can remember when I was listening to music, you know, Martina McBride's and Faith Hill's, it wasn't a big deal about, like, who wrote that. It was...
Yeah, it really wasn't.
Did you make me feel something? Because that's my job as an artist, is almost like an actress in a movie who doesn't write the script of her own lines. It's, do I play a role in making sure that you are connected to the words I'm singing? And so I will always be an advocate for that, and I will never stop recording songs that are still written by people who have nothing to do with me, because at the end of the day, I'm still working on that craft. I consider myself a co-writer more than I do a songwriter. I think a true songwriter is someone who can walk in, be locked in a room alone and come out with the full product on their own.
Right.
I consider myself a co-writer.
That's fair.
And I love being a part of the process. I think it makes me feel a little bit closer to the song, but I can still hear a song today that I haven't written and be like, wow,
Right.
that could have been written for me.
I mean, when you have a song that is so well written, it appeals to so many people. Like, regardless of how it was written, whether it was about a very personal experience, or in fact maybe more so, then is the time when it resonates with other people anyway. So I feel like as an artist, it's more your job to take those lyrics, take that melody, and
make it your own. And ultimately, the music we do as artists in this community, it's not supposed to be just ours anyway. The point of being in a commercial-based job like this, and you're trying to reach the masses, is our work is not our work anymore. It becomes yours. And it's supposed to resonate with thousands upon thousands, maybe even millions of people. It's supposed to feel like it's somebody else's. Once we are done with it and we put it out to the public, we're just hoping that you take it on as if it's your own.
Yeah. And I think the more authenticity there is in that, whether you've written the song or not, from the delivery, just everything as a whole,
Absolutely.
the more that is going to resonate with the people that are listening.
100%.
It's interesting because I think, say, there is a lot of maybe more stigma now about writing, but I think that's just because a lot more artists are wanting to write, I mean.
And I think that has to do with money sometimes, right, at that point.
Yeah.
But and also because I don't judge people. I don't think it makes you less of an artist or more of an artist if you've written it or not written
Completely
it.
agree.
To me, it's just, is it a good song? Have you related to it? Have you done a good job putting it out there?
Right.
I think that's really important. And I was really ashamed at the beginning. When I first moved here, I was very unapologetic about not being a songwriter because it wasn't something that I did. And I'm not going to pretend I'm something that I'm not. And then I started feeling that stigma start to creep in. Like, you're not a real artist if you're not writing music. And I'm a very stubborn girl. You can ask my parents. And so for a while, I was like, I'm still not writing because I'm not going to have someone tell me what I have to do to be an artist. I'm going to prove it my way. And then I had to pull my stubbornness out of the way because I went through a really, really big life event that really changed my whole life. And that's what kind of catapulted me into becoming a co-writer, because I realized there was, just like everybody else in music, we turn to music to relate to something, to not feel alone. When I went through this really big life event, there was no songs out there that made me feel less alone. There was nothing out there like it. So I figured, well, if someone else hasn't written it, I think I have to.
Right.
And it put me into the driver's seat a little bit more, and I'm very, very grateful that it forced me into that driver's seat because I've unlocked something in me that I didn't realize I could do and that I'm actually passionate about.
But I feel like sometimes it takes that
Yes.
to actually go, like, you can't force it. It's not something you can be like,
No
like,
way.
I don't write, do you know what, everyone's saying I should, so now I'm just going to sit down. It's not going to work. Like, sometimes you need that turning point, and that's fine.
And something to say. I
Yeah.
mean, really, I think we can all agree when we hear a good song, it's a good song, and there's a lot of songs out there that I love. For instance, written by one of my friends, Tammy Kid Hutton in town, who Leanne Rimes recorded it, Probably Wouldn't Be This Way. It's a wonderful country song. I've actually re-recorded it now, but I can't relate to that at all. Like, it's about somebody literally tragically losing their loved one to a death and someone that they were in love with and going to spend the rest of their lives with. I can't relate to that. That hasn't happened to me. However, I know when a good song is a good song.
Yeah.
But when it comes to something that's very personal to you and that you feel like you need to say, I really did learn that I kind of just had to do it myself. And luckily I've had a really beautiful team around me and trusted friends that I can get into a room with and share those very, very personal things with.
Because it is as well. I mean, you find the right people to get that out with. I mean, you have to have your heart on your sleeve. Everything comes out in that writer's room. Otherwise, you're not walking out with what you want.
Not at all. You got to be honest.
It's fun. You got to be vulnerable, and
Very.
that's hard. It is. Like, I think for anyone to just let all of that be it's not easy.
It's not easy because sometimes you're in rooms with people who don't know you, right? Yeah. And you don't know how they're going to react to something. Right. And I can't speak upon every other artist or co-writer, but I'm a pretty open book, and that I think scares a lot of people to a degree because I don't get nervous. I don't get anxious around other people, which I know a lot of other artists do. Mm-hmm. So I know my story might be unique to other people's, where I could walk into a room and just kind of tell you my whole life story from A to Z, and it could really throw people off a bit. But I don't feel uncomfortable in those positions, but I know it can be uncomfortable to share the deepest parts of you with people that you don't know, and you're trusting them to help you create something beautiful out of something that could be really hard.
Also, I think the element of sometimes walking in, you have an idea in your head of what you want that song to be, but that's your idea.
Exactly.
And it's very hard sometimes to relay that to the other people in the room, and then you kind of walk out and you're like, that was...
not at all what
Yeah, and I feel like that can be hard sometimes as well.
That's already happened to me.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even with friends of mine, I mean, you're expecting people to jump into your head, and that's just impossible.
Can't do it.
And so I've come in with ideas, and I've said, like, this is kind of what I want. And what started off with what I thought in my head was going to be a meaningful ballad turned into, like, an up-tempo, fun line dance song.
Right.
And I go, uh-oh. But this is where you as an artist, too, because if you're going to be the one recording the song, one, you don't want to stand in the way of something to be happening in the writing room, which is really important. But if you're not liking the direction, don't waste 2 hours of other people's time. Speak up. And sometimes that's hard to do, too. Speaking up, and that's why it's helpful to be in a room with people you trust and you respect, because... being able to speak up sometimes is hard. I know I'm made fun of all the time because even though I'm an outspoken girl, I'm the person that if, like, my order comes to the table wrong, I won't tell the server. I'll eat it. Yeah. And I that's how I am. So I kind of had to find that in me in the writing room to not feel awkward when something is going in a direction that I don't feel I can jump on board with. It's best to speak up now versus... you didn't say anything, and now you're with something that maybe you're not.
Because also then you've walked in with that idea, and now that idea is gone in a song that you not that you don't necessarily like, or it just is not necessarily where you wanted it to be.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's definitely... it's hard because at that point it's speaking up potentially becomes offending people.
Sure,
and that's not, no one wants to...
And in this business, I'm sure you've learned by sitting down with artists and maybe even songwriters that we're, like... emotional.
It's all very emotional, never.
Well, this is our art, right? So, and that's really hard to pick apart.
It's personal, it's and very people are passionate, and so you have to try and distinguish that line between when someone says, hey, actually, I don't really like this part, or I'm not sure about that. It's not a dig, it's not a personal attack, it is just actually like the song, But yeah, it does make it hard.
And like a recent situation I was in a write with two people who I'm close with, but we were writing a really, really cool song, and at one point a co-writer brought up the point of me putting on instead of putting on like a glass slipper like a princess would, pulling up her cowboy boots and getting stuff done. And I go, I don't do that. And I said, I know I sing country music, but I don't even think I really own a pair of cowboy boots. I said, that won't fit me. So can we try and figure out a way to make that more something that would fit me and what I would do? Because it's very hard as an artist to get up on stage and sing a song that you can't relate to the lyrics at all.
Right.
It's very hard, and you can't do your job by making someone feel something. I mean, it's one thing to get up and sing a cover and it just be that exactly what that is a cover.
There's a difference between loving a song that has already been out and you have an attachment to just because it's a classic or it reminds you of childhood stuff, rather than a whole new song that you're just like...
can affect your brand, right? Because I
100%.
think that's what people ultimately sometimes don't realize as just a listener, is that not only are we artists and musicians when it comes to the things that we put out into the world, but it's also what we wear, what we do. It's a whole package, and that gets tricky sometimes because you don't want to be inauthentic to what your brand is.
Right. And that's interesting. That's something that I know I've spoken about a couple of times on Who, is that now as an independent artist, you're not just you. Like, your name, your look, it is your brand, and I think I said that to someone and they kind of were like, well, no, like it's me. And I'm like, but it is. Like, yes, it's you and you can be authentic, but by the time you're pushing that out and you're in the spotlight, like it is your brand.
It is.
It's a business, and it might be creative and it might be something you love doing, but it's a business. And so that's...
And the trickiest part about that, and what I always say if anyone ever asks me kind of like my advice about doing this, is I always say try and keep your brand as closest to who you are already authentically. Because it would be tricky if, say, you made it, right? And you've made your brand something that is a little bit more... I don't know, something that you wouldn't do in your everyday life. And now you have to live by that. And you're stuck with it. So.
Yeah, that's the thing, you are. There's no going back once you start going down that path.
Right.
So since you moved to town, so you've been in town for 7 years.
Almost, I think. We're coming up on that, I think.
So obviously at this point, I'm sure you've made a lot of great connections. What has been, like, since moving, what do you think's been your hardest challenge, just navigating everything, and also through COVID, you know?
Throwing out everything you thought, like literally everything you think, just throw it out already before you even get here. It's nothing what I thought. I was very naive. I really did think that I was going to put out a few things and I was going to be like performing on the CMA Awards. I don't know really what I thought. And that's just not the case. But really what it comes down to is how much work you're willing to put in. I genuinely believe everybody has a shot. In my opinion, it's putting out quality work and consistency.
Yes.
And I do think the pendulum swings, and I think you just kind of have to wait for your time and your moment, and all the stars kind of have to align all right at the same time, which the wheels in motion, like all four wheels on a car have to be spinning in the same direction. If one's stopped or one's going back the other way, it's kind of hard to get forward.
Right.
So I really just say I had to overcome the idea of everything I thought I was going to do and my expectations and throw them out the window and realize I have to be patient, which, again, ask mom and dad. I'm not patient. So
I don't know what patience is with.
This taught me a lot of patience and climbing an imaginary ladder in which you can't skip steps. And I think people think you can. And you hear these stories, like, for instance, like Lainey Wilson, everyone loves her right now. And everyone's like, oh, what an overnight success. There was nothing overnight about it.
No.
So the public may think something, but it's a lot of consistency and a lot of hard work and a lot of meeting people and finding your crew and your family and trusting and leaning into that and just, again, consistently trying to grow. The moment you think you've done it, you just pack up. Yeah. Now with COVID, which was really, it was very difficult. I think if you were already an established artist, it was fine, because at the end of the day, what happened with COVID is what I think I realized is people resorted back to comfortability. People resorted back to what they knew. People weren't looking for new necessarily. Maybe on TikTok they were, which I really wasn't a part of the TikTok wave in 2020.
That was really during COVID, TikTok seemed to be the thing that was really the saving grace for a lot of independent artists. But with that being said, I mean, that was a lot of work for most people for very little.
Exactly. So, I mean, there are some who really thrived through that. And I think, like, a few to name, it would be like Ashley Cook or Priscilla Block. I think they really, really were able to find that, and it worked. Yeah. And then there were a lot of people where it worked for a second, and then it's died off, right? And what kind of stinks about this new wave of what we're doing right now, and this is my opinion, by the way, everyone can have their own, is we go from artists not only now writing our music, recording it, doing the photo shoots, doing the music videos, but now we have to be like these content creators. And I'm going to be really honest, I'm not good at it.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot. And I just think back, if you just take us back even just 10 years ago, artists 10 years ago weren't expected to, I don't know, it's a song and dance now. And again, it works for so many. I just know what I'm good at and what I feel like I bring to the table, and that wasn't it. Like, I wasn't good at that, and I know that could set back artists now in this generation.
You post one wrong thing as well, you know, and it's there forever. I mean, it's hard because you've got so many social media platforms. Every single one of them has got a different, like, where do I need to be?
Algorithms.
I think that's one of the things that I feel like COVID had a really negative effect on, because all of a sudden the labels are going, hey, like, we haven't done anything, and all of a sudden, like, this independent artist has now got 500,000 followers on TikTok. And we were like, we didn't have to pay for that.
We didn't have to do anything.
No one had. And they're like, well, if people can do this, then let's just sit back a little more.
There's no need for like the A&R role, right? At a label. It's TikTok. It's Reels on Instagram.
Right, we'll just have someone sit, and if you've got X amount of followers and your videos are getting consistent views, we'll then come in and we'll talk. And it's
crazy. I mean, some of it can just be a flash in the pan, right? Like, at that point, this is why I'm not trying to say that I'm better off than anyone else. No way. I'm in a town full of so much talent. I can't even keep my head on straight. But I did go on tour for 5 years. I worked a crowd. I did live shows. And so it is really difficult to distinguish between someone who's singing in their bedroom and a song that gets millions of hits. And then what I want to see is throw them up on a stage. Yeah. Can they perform? Can they do that without it being comfortable inside of their own bedroom, where they could film it as many times as they want before putting it up?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're in front of people and it's like, oh, wait.
Yeah, and I think country music, more so than any other genre, is about connection, human connection. It's about
100%.
relating to people. I know, not saying that other genres don't do that. I just happen to think that country music is very special in that regard, that's the point. It's relating to the everyday person. Right. It's talking about real life issues.
Well, it's always been about lyrics as opposed to, just having a good beat.
Sure.
The lyrics have always, for the most part, have always been at the forefront of country music. Absolutely. So it has to connect more. I mean, talking about songwriting and, that in general, you also have a podcast.
Yeah, and that started before I was even ever songwriting. It was my way. Songwriting community, I think, like we said earlier, is such a big piece of Nashville. It's the heart of Nashville, in my opinion. And a piece of me was feeling a little bit of FOMO, for instance, of fear of being left out of a community that I desperately wanted to at least get to know. And I felt like I couldn't because I wasn't one of them.
Right.
So starting this podcast, it's called What's Mine Is Yours, and it's me interviewing like Nashville's biggest songwriters. And it really did start with the idea of me getting the stories behind the songs, but it has very much evolved. It's now kind of getting their take on the music industry as a whole. It's getting their opinions, what's happening. Do they like it? Do they not like it? The thing is they're not really given the opportunity, like artists like myself sitting here with you, to have free range to talk.
Right.
No one really hands them the mic. It's like they're expected to pump out all of this great work with no recognition.
Right. No one and it, as awful as it sounds, most people don't care. What they care about is the artist singing it.
It's the fame of it all, right?
Yeah,
it's the people are interested in gossip, salaciousness, fame, and I get that. That's why the artist is the artist, and that's why they can handle what they do. But what you don't realize is the songwriters are the ones telling your stories.
Right. Let's open the door and actually go, well, this song that you love so much, that, the whole time you've been listening to it, you're like, oh, it's clearly about this. And then all of a sudden, like, we come back round to the songwriter and they may have written it about something
totally
completely different.
Which is totally okay. But I think that's what maybe the artist community is scared to envelop, right? Is that the audience will then go, well, wait, so that it wasn't about that? It's really actually about this? I'm not scared to put that out there. I think
I love that. I think that
it shows you we all have similar instances. We all have similar life experience, and that's what makes us closer. It's what brings us together, is that I went through something similar, but then this person went through something that's kind of like that, but pretty similar. We're not alone. Nobody's
experience is ever unique. As much as in the moment you feel like it is. And, I've had friends that have been in bad situations. I've been in bad situations. And I think once you're out the other side of them and you start talking, it can feel very isolating in the moment.
Yep.
But music
and
those songs and people writing about stuff, and then maybe hearing that actually this song was written about that, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I went through that.
No, it shouldn't take away
from 100%
at all what the artist has done with the
song. If anything, it should bolster that.
Absolutely. And it's really nice to get the songwriter's take on everything, not just the song itself. I mean, I can tell when I interview them that they're not talked to very often because they don't want to stop talking.
Yeah.
And that, in a sense, almost breaks my heart because if we took their jobs away and we just kind of did this thing where like artists have to write their music, that's it, we are going to be left with very lackluster music. I can promise you that, and I stand firm in that. This is where I am a huge advocate for the songwriter and people who just do songwriting as a job. If we take that away, we take away their job. Right. We take away substance and music, and we take away these stories that the world needs to hear. And I always get concerned about what happens to all those songs that never got cut because a songwriter wasn't a co-writer on it, or an artist wasn't a co-writer on it. Like, what happened to all of that music that is probably amazing and not just kind of being fed through a machine to make sure, oh, we got to write this single, we got to get through it, we got to do it, versus like this stuff that was really like monumental to somebody, a story that is probably needs to be heard by the world, and it's just being what
it's just sat in a
collecting cobwebs that and that's why initially when I moved to Nashville, that's kind of what I was my mission statement. It was like, I want to pull these songs from the drawers and I want to give them a vehicle and give them a voice. That was my whole point until I had gone through, you know, my big life experience, and I really did realize that I had something to say too, and maybe not only can I be an advocate for the community, but I can potentially be a part of the community, and that made me feel really good.
Do you feel like from doing that podcast, from being able to sit down with these songwriters and get all those insights, do you think that has helped you hone your craft as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of wisdom that comes from some of these songwriters when I sit down and talk to them it's no amount of money can be used to purchase that. It's really is something, and what really hurt me, I forgive me, I forget which guest was the one that told me this, but he said that he was on a walk either at Percy Priest or one of the places nearby Radnor Lake, and a newer songwriter, he did not give me the name, and I don't think we would say it anyway, was walking past him, and he was with a friend, and he goes, hey, this is Hall of Famer songwriter so-and-so, and the younger new songwriter apparently looked at him and just said, who cares, and walked by. Wow. And that struck me horribly, and I thought, hey, anyone who's listening who's a newer songwriter, it's kind of like that respect your elders thing. 100%. Like, they paved the way for you to be here, and we're telling stories that have gone down in history, and you have something to learn from them.
Right.
And this is why I have a collection of people who are on my show, whether it's, you know, Hall of Famers or even new songwriters. I do not discriminate towards anybody who wants to come on the show. But it is really something to say that, like, all of a sudden we're in this new wave of, like, the social media and this, that they don't think they have anything to learn from.
Right. I would like to think that is not a universal opinion. And I mean,
I don't think so.
Knowing Nashville and knowing what Nashville's like, whoever that person is probably is not going to last that long if they don't change that mindset. Because I always say, like, I've done a lot of work in media over the years, and I'll have people be like, oh, you know, like, have you know, what's so-and-so like? I'll be like, I've never met them, but I've never heard anything bad about them. And I'm like, if you don't hear anything bad about them, that's usually a pretty solid thing that, you know, they are a good person. Like, most people aren't bragging when someone's nice, but the second someone decides to not be so, I mean, you hear about it.
It's a tight-knit community. And I remember when I moved here, that was something that really mattered to me, was like first impressions are everything, just like they are with a lot of things, like on a first date or wherever you go. But in the music industry, first impressions are very important. And I wanted to make sure that, you know, I put my best foot forward. And I mean, you don't want to burn any bridges, but at the same time, it is the music business, right? Sometimes tough choices have to be made. And luckily, I have a really, really wonderful team around me that always has my best interest at heart. And I think as advice to musicians, songwriters, and artists out there is find people who look after you like they're your family. Yeah. Because that really helps quite a bit, because you see so many, we talked about COVID, and I can't tell you the amount of artists that were friends with who packed up and moved home because they just couldn't do it anymore. Or they're maybe who they worked with no longer, they didn't serve them anymore. And there's a lot that happens in this community. You just gotta have to, like, really learn the craft, learn the business. I really always say learn the business first and foremost. I would even say come and intern at a label. Learn the ins and outs of something before tackling this, because there's so much more that goes on behind it all than just standing on a stage and writing a song and singing it.
And you really have to now. Again, like going back to just being that one-man band, you have to know every part because no one else is running up to do that for you. And if you get label interest, they want to see that you already know all that stuff and that you've already done it.
Yes.
Which sucks
In
a lot of ways. But
It
I guess it's also broadening people's perspectives. I mean, I think it's good in any role you have to be able to understand what the people around you are doing, rather than just go, hey, this is my job. You know what, actually, like, when you pass this off to this person, what is their process? Like, what does that mean for them when you get... So I like it in some ways, and I think there's pros and cons to it.
Yeah, like I said, like it doesn't mean you have to be good at all of it. Just know how it works.
Right.
So I always compare what I don't think this is a one-man show. I have a village. I always say it takes a village. And what people don't realize is you think there's the independent, but open the curtain a bit more and there's probably a lot more people standing behind that independent. And I compare it to building a house all of the time. Whoever lays the foundation isn't necessarily the person who puts in the plumbing. However, it doesn't mean that person who laid the foundation doesn't need to not know why the plumbing is important.
Exactly.
Or the process of it. I think that's very, very beneficial. I think if you're an artist and you just say, you delegate jobs to people and you stand back and you just like let it happen, you're going to find yourself in a really sticky situation.
Yeah. I think that's a great analogy for the house thing. So with all that being said, let's talk a little bit about your music.
Yeah.
Obviously you have stuff out. You say you've been releasing since you've been here.
Yeah.
So I guess let's kind of dig into that a little bit. What's out now? What can people find?
Yeah. So I have quite a bit of music that I've released, obviously, since I've been in 2017. But I think if you look at all of that leading up to what I've just now recently released, which is stuff that I've actually been a writer on, you're going to see so much growth of me as an artist and how I have not necessarily changed, but grown. And it really does show the life experience that I've done. Now, obviously, these were songs that were pitched to me prior in the past, and I fell in love with them one way or another, and I attached my story to them, and I took that job very seriously. But the music I've just now recently released, which started with the first single, which was I'm Your Woman, which is going to be the actual title of the entire EP. Yeah. But I'm Your Woman was one of the first songs that I co-wrote, and it started with a picture of my dad and I sitting on a couch, and I'm maybe 2 or 3 years old, and he's reading to me Snow White. Again, Disney reference. And it was basically just struck me as my dad really has always believed in me and is instilled in me to believe in fairy tales, to believe that those can still exist. Now, that doesn't mean that the fairy tale looks as if how Disney shows it to you. A fairy tale is very subjective to whoever wants to say however they feel. And so is what people are looking for in a partner. So the song I'm Your Woman is, here's everything that I am. And if that's something you're looking for, I'm your woman. And while writing this, which was so interesting, is I was engaged at the time. And I was more writing this as an anthem for other women because I kind of felt like I've already got that. Like, I already have a man who calls me his woman, and this is what I bring to the table. What I didn't realize is that engagement would fall through so horribly, and it would now be a song that not only spoke to other people, but to me. And it's fun, it's upbeat. It was a great first single to kind of like bring people into the new work. And then I just recently released my new single, which is Took Back. And this was the one that was the most vulnerable and hard one for me to write. It was the one that really catapulted me into songwriting. Okay. And it was about the broken engagement. And the tagline, the hook of the song is, so here's the thing, it's not just a ring you took back. Because he did ask for the ring back, and he called the wedding off 6 weeks before the wedding.
I have words that we're not going to say on the podcast, so...
And again, I spoke to People Magazine for an exclusive interview for when they debuted the music video that went along with the song. And I told them, by no means am I a perfect partner. I'm not claiming that I was perfect in this relationship.
I think if anyone, no one is perfect at anything, any of the time. We all strive to be the best we can be.
Yeah. It was just more how I would handle something. And at the end of the day, I was told, all you care about is the ring. the dress, the wedding. But really that ring symbolizes something so much more. And that's kind of what the song, you didn't just take the ring back. You took back my time. You took love. You took 5 years of my life. There was a lot you took back that there seems to be zero remorse for. And that is what really catapulted me into having to tell this story, because there was no song out there for me to relate to that was about, in country music, we hear a lot about divorce country. We hear a lot about divorce and sharing that side of it. You don't hear a lot about broken engagements.
Right.
And if at all, really,
I'm sitting here trying to think of, no, I mean, it's always
the end of a marriage. Yeah. And I thought, okay, someone can't just pitch a song to me because nothing's going to tell my story. Right. So I have to just go in and do it. And it was a really hard day to do it. Luckily, I had people that I really respect and I love around me. And also one of my co-writers had been through a broken engagement. So he was like, I think I can really kind of hone in on what you're trying to do here. And that was really, really helpful. And I wanted the song to feel like no one else existed and I was in a room with just him and I was talking just to him. I wanted it to feel like a conversation. And that's how I wanted the music video to feel too. So the music video that we shot, and my dear friend and director Robert Shavers, I wanted it really simple. There was 380 people invited to the wedding, so I had 380 save the dates made and 380 cancellation cards that we had to send out, all spread out around me in an empty room, to make you feel that it was so much more than just, yes, a marriage is between two people, but there were a lot of other factors. There were a lot of other people involved, a lot of airfare, hotel, money spent that people can't get back, that if you would have just told me right off the bat you didn't want to get married, that could have been a lot easier than us going through what we went through.
Right. Like there's never going to be a happy outcome, but there are ways to at least try and mitigate the pain that is caused from stuff. But,
absolutely.
But also, you never know how you're going to handle things. But I mean, that's a lot to...
Yeah, and I wanted to know, I know for a fact that multiple people have gone through broken engagement. So I thought, this is really helpful. This song, really, and I've met plenty of people already reach out to me saying, hey, I went through a broken engagement last year. Like, this has been really, really helpful. And that's all I can hope for, right? Like, obviously, selfishly, I want him to hear it and and feel a type of way about it and watch that video, because it was emotional for me to get through. And it is my truth, it's my story. But ultimately, kind of like the title of my podcast and the reason why my podcast is named What's Mine Is Yours, what starts off as mine, I want it to be yours. I want you to feel like you can find yourself in it. Obviously, I don't want too many people to have to relate to that song.
Of course.
But the ones that do, I hope it helps you.
But I feel like that's where what a song is written about and what it becomes can also be different. Like, although, it is for you specifically about that broken engagement, there will be plenty of people that you can relate to it just from a broken relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
Because ultimately, although there was a ring involved, although
that's
there
a symbolization.
Were these plans, right, the nitty-gritty of it and the base of that, it's all rooted in exactly the same thing.
It's loss.
Yeah.
And that's something that every human can relate to. That's why I'm very specific about the things that I do sing about, even if I'm not the one writing it, is I do have a lot of love-centric, focused music, whether that's happy, sad, angry, because that's something, love is a universal language, like music is. And we've all know that feeling to love, whether maybe not be in love, but maybe you love a family member, maybe you love a pet. We all know the feeling of love.
Right.
And we also have all experienced the feeling of loss. And that's something that is so universal for everybody. And that's why I kind of stick in those parameters a little bit with my music, because I want to relate to people.
Right. So when you walked into that writing room to write that song, was that a in and out with the song in the same day? Did you did you find once it started coming out on paper that it just kind of like everything you had pent up from, the anger, the pain, the sadness, like did it all just roll out?
It did. And one of my co-writers, she was actually very much heavily involved in the separation in general for me. Like, she came over to my house for me multiple times and stayed there while he would get stuff out of the house. And so she I think almost oddly enough, kind of like a big sister role, like felt that pain for me too. And so when I came in with the idea of taking back a ring, then that's kind of where it just started to flow. And we both all agreed on that the first verse would be kind of describing the ring in itself and what that felt like to wear it. That it's made of gold and that you feel like you're on top of the world, but then now that whole feeling's gone. And it was then in the second verse, before my the broken engagement, we had bought a house together, and I thought that's such a tricky thing to do, right? To get out of and to get through and to maneuver through all the logistics of things. And then we thought, well, what is that? What is a house? It's kind of like a ring. It's a symbolization of something, but it means something so much more. So the walls of a house, it's not the house itself, it's what you fill the house with. It's the memories, it's all of that. So once we really started to get on a roll, it just fell out.
There's so many, from the visuals and creating that, there's so many ways that you can go with it and so much to say.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to make sure that all of the songs, your EP, we're going to link to everything so people can go find it as well. But I think it's really interesting, really to delve back into that. Because like we say, the whole point of this podcast is that people, you hear the finished product.
Yeah.
And whether that be from the songwriting thing, from the artist's perspective, from the musician's perspective. And the majority of people really don't think much more. No. They go on Spotify, they go on Apple Music, we hit play, we listen to 3.5 minute song. Awesome.
Yep.
Like, I love that song. And then that's it. There's no second thought. And that is absolutely nothing against the consumers, because that's what we do.
Sure.
But I think to be able to delve in and really understand, yeah, sure, this is a 3.5 minute song, but this 3.5 minute song was 5 years of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's a great way to put it. And what I'm learning more about the listener, though, and is through talking to people, the more information you give, the more they actually do want to indulge. So if we as a community are willing to open up more, willing to show the behind the scenes of things, I think people are craving it.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't give it as often.
I don't think they know that they want it because it's not there.
People love the behind the curtain, right? We love the what was I not supposed to know, but I accidentally got let in on. That's really, people really enjoy that. And I think we as a community could be better at, of course there has to always be a little bit of intrigue and mystery to what we do. But at the end of the day, I think it's our job to show a little bit more behind the curtain. One, to gain trust. I think it's important now more than ever in this community to gain trust from your listeners.
Yes.
And we're seeing that more and more every day, where I just think if we were a bit more upfront, I think there should be nothing that we should have to hide or want to hide. So the more we peek back into, behind the curtain a bit for the listener, I think the more we will be able to gain the trust of our audience.
Yeah. I think it's kind of all just goes back to being relatable as well. People want to know you. And I know that I've said this before, is that I am more inclined to listen to music from an artist that I respect and I like than those that I'm maybe not such a huge fan of. And it doesn't, that, you can argue that doesn't make any difference to the quality of the music they're putting out. But for me as a consumer, if I like the person and I feel like I relate to the person, it doesn't even, I'm probably just going to love your music more.
Honestly, no, it's so true. And this is why I know that happens in every genre, but that's why country music specifically, why I say it's really about the connection and the human interaction with country music. Because there is something to be said about not just loving the music, but loving the brand, the person, what they stand for, who they are. I think all of that plays into a role into if you want to go stream their music or buy it on iTunes. I think you really have to build a bond with your listener.
Yes.
Authentically too, not I play a role and you fell in love with that role, but I'm not really that role.
Right.
You have to authentically be that person. And I know I struggle with that online, and I'm very open and honest about it. And that's one of my downfalls is I'm a really talkative person when I'm with people face to face, but I feel really funky with my phone and like, hey, what's up everybody? I feel really weird about that. I'm not good at that. So I post a lot of just photos of me. It's really hard to get to know someone through a photo. I think they just see a professional photo shoot and they think that's cold. That doesn't feel real, that feels, contrived, and that's the last thing I want to be. So I, even as an artist, have to learn every day how to fix that.
And we also live in a world now, like especially with social media, people are incredibly judgmental on stuff. So it really,
are they not?
It doesn't take a lot. You put a photo out there that you're like, oh my God, like I love this photo.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden someone's like, oh my God, like I can't believe.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just.
Yeah, no.
That was my English Valley girl. Oh my God, I can't even like.
That was good.
That's it. So that's all I've got. I've either got like wildly southern or incredibly like California Valley girl. Neither of which I like to just. I'll stick with this accent.
Yeah, it is tricky to navigate as an artist, because I do want people to get to know me as a person, and I have to be better, and artists in general. And I know so many artists that are so good at it. Like I think Kelsey Ballerini is exceptional at showing her personality online. And I don't know because I'm a really bubbly person too, and I know she is, and I go, why am I not good at that? And it's just something, we all have our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And mine happens to be social media. I'm not good at it, and which is horrible in this day and age, because that's kind of my bread and butter at this point of getting out there to people. So it's something that I work on every day as an artist, and I think songs like Took Back are helping humanize me a bit more versus just a photo online. And that really does help show that, like, I think it's really easy for someone to come to our highlight reels, which is our Instagram, and see, oh, life's perfect. Well, no, I went through something really, really, really hard and really difficult for me that set me back quite a bit, emotionally, physically, even in my music. And that I think a lot of people are so quick to think that, oh, she probably just has a really easy go at things. Or,
I mean, anything that anyone puts on social media, that is the...
Sure.
You get to portray the best version of yourself. You get to portray that happy-go-lucky, not a care in the world person.
Yes.
And in reality, how many people can honestly say that the persona they have on social media is them? Because if anyone's like, yeah, I'm this happy every day, my life is amazing. No, you wake up some mornings and you just don't want to do life. Yeah. You just want to be like, I want to stay in bed.
Totally.
Like, everyone has the bad days, but no one's documenting the bad days.
No.
Because people don't want to see that.
And I think this is why, as musicians, it's really helpful for us. So I guess it would be different for, like, say, an Instagram influencer, where their job really is to put out, like, the best versions of it. With musicians, we're in a really cool spot because our music gets to speak for that. So maybe our Instagram doesn't show you all the bad days, but our music does.
Right.
And that's what's really special about music, is that we can write about happy, sad, angry, and all of the things. And that part, we're not judged too much on. We get to be emotional in music. That's what
very true.
Music
I've never thought of that.
Totally gets to do whatever it wants. And then people get to latch on to it the way they want to. And it's not as judged as photographs on Instagram.
No, you're right. That's actually not something that's crossed my mind, but you're right. I mean, you can put something out there so vulnerable and people are like, oh my God, like this song is amazing.
The more vulnerable you are, the better, actually.
Now, if you were to just go onto Facebook and be like, oh, I'm going to update your status, right? Or you write this whole long sob story.
People would be like, get off.
Just, who cares? If you're that sad, just like, why are you writing it on Facebook?
Yeah.
But it is. People immediately will jump on you sharing stuff in that way. But somehow through putting it in a song,
it's art at that point, right? Like people are way more apt to gravitate towards vulnerable music than not vulnerable music. I mean, of course you have the fun ones like Country Girl, Shake It For Me, Luke Bryan, that people love, and it's a fun song.
Right.
But I really think if we were to do like a whole like case study on this, I really think that it's the vulnerable music where people really showed you a part of themselves that they didn't think anybody would see. Yeah. That's the stuff that really connects.
Oh, if I can finish a 3.5-minute song and be in tears at the end, I'm like, yes, this was a great day.
Yeah.
But also
I like sad music though, so that's
I love sad music.
And I'm a relatively happy person. So when someone looks at, say, my phone, or when we had like iPods back in the day, I did age myself, I get a bit, and people would like look through my my music, they'd be like, are you okay? And I said, it's just the thing that gets me the most. It makes me feel something. And ultimately, just like a listener, and even though I'm in the music industry, I I turn to music the same way everybody else does. It's to feel something.
Yes.
And for some reason, the happy stuff doesn't do it for me.
But I think it's also, and that's what also makes it interesting, is that it is so subjective between people.
Absolutely.
You know, is that,
my mom hates sad stuff. She wants happy stuff.
Like, but maybe that also comes to being so immersed in music and just really loving to understand the stories.
Yep.
Because I'm the same. Like, I would much, don't get me wrong, I love all the upbeat stuff, but I would much rather sit and make myself miserable listening to a whole album of, like, sad songs.
Totally. Like, so absolutely, like, people will ask me all the time, are you a lyric or a melody person? And I'm really fast to say lyric, because I like to really dissect the lyrics. Now, if you ask someone like my mom, she isn't even listening to the lyrics. She's just feeling, like, how is the melody making her feel? How is the tempo making her feel? Now, mind you, when you get more deeper into music, a melody can tell a story without lyrics as well.
Yes.
So that's why melody is also very important. However, I just happen to be a little biased to the lyric sides of things. But a melody is equally as important, because if you stripped, say, for instance, What Hurts the Most, Rascal Flatts, if you strip all those lyrics away, for some reason you still feel it. And so that shows you how much a melody can impact someone's emotions
100%.
just as much as the lyric can.
And that circles back around to what we were talking about in the first place, in how something is delivered. I mean, you could have the best lyrics in the world. You could have the worst lyrics in the world. And
Chris Stapleton can sing the phone book.
Oh, it would be amazing.
And probably make you cry.
And I'd listen all day, every day.
He has this absolute ability to be soulful, even if he wasn't singing about anything soulful. And there's just people who have a gift for that.
But then, and this may be controversial to say right now, but
what isn't?
Texas Hold'em, Beyonce.
Oh, yes.
Everyone's talking. But I mean, lyrically, no offense, but lyrically, that song is not great, right? It is. Let's just chuck in a load of these, like, southern country cliches.
Absolutely.
But my God, does that song have a beat? I mean, like, I will quite happily put that on.
Dance to it. Absolutely.
And the melody and it just.
And it holds just as much value in the sense of bringing people together, because even though you don't bring someone together in a way through shared experiences, maybe through a sad song, you're bringing people together through a good time. So whether that's getting together, cheersing a drink, or dancing, I mean, that's just as much as community as you need. We all find community in very different areas for different reasons. And sometimes we don't want to be sad. We want to be happy. So
sometimes we want to shake it for Luke Bryan, and we'll do it.
And heck, have I seen that at his shows? So yeah,
or from him or the fans.
Both.
Both. So okay, music.
Yeah.
So you got your single out. I say we're going to link to everything. The EP is coming out.
Yes.
Or is out. The
Not
EP's
out. Coming out.
When can we expect the EP?
It's May.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, May 31st.
And then how is the rest of the year looking for you on releases and music and, you know, your goals to the end of 2024?
So finally, I kind of think I'm finally getting into a place where my goals are actually going to go into fruition. So for years, I keep saying, I want to be out there. I want to be singing. Well, now that I am writing, I'm getting all the opportunities that I never had before, which is to participate in writers' rounds, which is all the time here in Nashville.
Everywhere.
I could never participate in them because I wasn't writing my music. And I wasn't going to get on stage and pretend like I was. So now I finally get to get out there and to starting with, I get to perform tomorrow night. So I get to get back to doing what I love, which is actually performing. I love the studio, but that's such a small portion of what we do that I'm so excited that I actually get to take these songs that I wrote to the public and actually start singing them. And so I know we can be expecting a lot more music live from me, which I'm so excited about. So that's the one thing that I'm hoping to do more with these songs that are coming out, whether that's performing, whether that's hopefully just getting them out there more. And when it comes to the podcast, we're gearing up for season 2, which I'm really excited about. We're kind of shifting it and making it pretty different, which is scary, but also it needed to be done. So we're going to have a whole rebranding. We're gearing up with guests right now, and we're just going to give a whole fresh, even better outlook on what you already had. So what the podcast already is, but just now expected to be like 10 times better.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. It's growth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Always striving to be better. And like I say, we are going to link to absolutely everything in the show notes. Facebook, when you have shows, once social media comes,
Yeah.
we'll share stuff.
Yeah.
We'll share stuff out and make sure that people can hear it. I mean, is there anything else you feel like you want to share with everyone about what's going on, or just you? And
gosh, what I want to share is that I'm really glad that this music is finally coming out now, and I'm very happy as the timing is when it has. I don't think I would have been ready, even though I am 33, which I don't like to say out loud sometimes. But I think I needed to go through real life experiences before I could start sharing this, and where I could really start relating to people. And I think this is a time more than ever where I feel like I'm going to be more connected to my audience than I ever have before. And I'm really hoping this music finds a home with people like my music hasn't ever before.
Right.
And that is what I'm really looking forward to. I'm really happy to hear all the feedback of this new music, and because it is more personal to me than it ever has been before. But again, I'm so happy that this is the time it's happening.
Yeah.
I think I'm built for it. I'm ready for it, and I'm just excited to see what comes from it.
I mean, it sounds like it has all kind of come to a head with that. And I think it's important now that you're putting that stuff out that you do feel like everything is authentically you. And actually going back to Chris Stapleton, I mean, he's been a writer in town for years.
For years.
All those songs that he was like, you know what, I'm going to hold them back because one day I'm going to release a record. And when he eventually did, which I'm going to say was probably too late because I would have loved to have heard more of him beforehand. But when he eventually got his solo record together, it was years and years of crafting the perfect sound and knowing that he could release something that was going to be him.
Yeah.
So, you know what, I mean, time...
What is that anymore?
Right. I think it's important that you can put something out and be happy with it as well, and know that when you look back on that, you're like, everything, like every part of me went into that, and be so proud of what you've put out.
Oh my goodness, yes. I've always been proud of the things I've put out, but there's always something I could have picked apart about all the things in the past.
And I'm sure you in 10 years, I'm sure you're going to look back and be
like,
ugh.
But I will say with this project, more so than anything else I've ever done, I'm more proud of this than anything else. I really am, and I've really loved the other stuff I've put out, and I'm not proud of that. But this for some reason really, this is something that I needed to say, and I waited a year to really say it because all of this, the big thing that happened in my life took place a year ago, and I sat on it for a while because I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. You see so many artists, and naturally take to music to share, the things that happen in their life. I really wasn't sure if that was something I was going to do. I wasn't positive about it. And there are just some things that happened where I just felt like, I think I need to. So I'm very, very proud for it to be out in the world in May, and I can't wait for people to hear it.
I'm excited for people to hear it as well, and I will be checking it out.
Thank you.
And I say we'll share it everywhere once it is out.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. This was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Everyone, we are going to be back next week with another episode of Sippin On Country. We have some great guests coming up, and we will see you soon. Tiffany Woys, everyone.
Thank you.
Recorded at 2300 Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Original theme music by Gary Wood.